one angle I wanted to come at this from was we're talking about the benefits and the consequences of open weight models versus something that's potentially open source versus the closed models that you pay for. If I'm the person who, maybe I work at a call center right now, maybe I'm an artist, and I'm worried about the future of AI and how it affects my ability to be employed in a very broad and general sense. Does this type of difference in model play out very differently for me? Because I'm worried about my job being taken away. And my job, not only my job being taken away, but my job being taken away and then not being able to step into anything new in any reasonable amount of time. So how do you think the difference in these models affects all of the people that are worried about the consequences of this technology?
So I've talked about this on stream, and I'm going to repeat that idea. One of the reasons I think a frequent criticism and concern, which is certainly valid, of all this AI stuff is even if AI is as powerful as everybody says and it becomes this incredible thing, it's just going to concentrate wealth in the hands of a few, right? Because it's going to allow certain companies and certain leaders and certain people to just become even more powerful with AI, and they're just going to reap all the benefits and everybody else is going to lose their jobs and suffer. I think one of the counterpoints and the reason why I think open source is so incredibly valuable and important is because when a company like DeepSeek, when a model like DeepSeek is released, the accessibility of AI models just skyrocketed, right? Because before, ChatGPT was the leader. They had the best products and they could put up this paywall right here, according to this on Google. And this is Google's Gemini AI. So who knows if it's correct, but it looks like they have 20 million paid subscribers right now on ChatGPT.
Right.
It's $400 million a year on people paying $20 a month to use ChatGPT. Like that's
they're losing money on it.
Wait, 400, that's $400 million a month? $400 million a month then, right?
20 million paid
20 million
subscribers.
paying the minimum $20 tier?
Yeah, that's what this
20
is.
the minimum?
It's hard.
It's not a 5?
No, it's 20 is the minimum.
20 is the
Yeah. So, again, it's hard to know. ChatGPT is not, OpenAI is not
The
super
estimate.
forthcoming with all of their data, but this is the estimate. But the problem is if they're spending $1 billion or multiple billions of dollars every year.
In the same amount of time. It's
Right.
still a loss.
And that's just what they're currently doing. They're trying to ramp it up constantly because the next thing is going to be more expensive. The next thing is going to be more expensive. So I think there's a real world where if you just had 3 AI companies that were making these things, they were growing bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, that you might see essentially all the value of AI consolidate with them. And you would need to trust them to continue to make it available to everybody for a reasonable price so that the average person in the world can benefit from it, right?
But in that situation, it's kind of like if anything becomes utility-esque in society, but private companies still control it, the degree that they can gouge you on it because it's essentially required for day-to-day life. I would, in a way, how we basically all need a phone and the internet to interact with society, right? If you're applying for jobs, you can't just show up and hand them a resume anymore. The interaction is very online now.
Yes.
Like, so in this circumstance, by making something open source, you potentially relieve that.
Imagine that right now you can go buy an Android phone or an iPhone, right?
Yeah.
Both about $1,000. And then you got to pay for $100 a month internet subscription, or whatever it is, like whether that's a home or part of your mobile device or whatever. And that's probably considered the bare minimum to exist in society and be and can like work with businesses and whatever else, right? Imagine that a Chinese company released a phone that cost 5% of that. So what that'd be $50, right? They release a $50 phone that's just as good, and a $50 internet subscription.
And that's why this episode is brought to you by the Huawei P60.
Yes, yes.
Huawei P60 Pro. It doesn't work in America.
Use code 8. Yeah. So if you have these models that are released and they're open, the price that another company who's closed source, like OpenAI, like ChatGPT, can charge goes down dramatically, right?
Competition.
Right. It's
just
just competition, right? And so open source is like, it's not just a matter of you come in with a better product that's cheaper. Again, if DeepSeek had come in and said, we're way cheaper, you can come use our closed source thing, that's just a competitor to ChatGPT. But every time they release an open weight model, they've basically set, this is the standard that's free now.
Yeah.
So you have to be way above that in order to possibly justify your expenses, which to me means that every year or few months, you're going to have the private companies pushing the boundaries and the quality of AIs way up. But then every few months, the open source competitors are going to catch up almost to them, release a model that suddenly becomes the floor. The other private companies can't charge that much anymore because it doesn't make any sense. And now they have to leapfrog again.
And
so it's just like extreme
they have to go back
of,
to their investors and say, hey, we need another $100 billion to train the new model.
Because
and eventually
DeepSeek just came out with their new one.
Eventually the investors say, fuck no. Like that's the point we're getting at, where people are starting to question. We keep shoveling money into this furnace for you to buy 10 billion more GPUs and make the next model that's going to make us money. But then it doesn't. Then you make it and it's cool and people like it. But then there's an open source one 3 months later. That's the scary part for the corporate.
This is kind of sick.
In retirement, everybody.
So, and this is why it's not directly answering the job thing, but I'm not seeing a world right now. And there's other folks who agree with this, like Mark Andreessen is voiced similar things about the merits of open source, which is that because companies are incentivized to open source things, and this isn't even getting into the fact that other countries are incentivized to do this. China is massively incentivized to drop DeepSeek open weight because they just fucked every American AI company, right? By releasing DeepSeek, they're just like, all of your attempts to just have like total control over the AI, nope, it's all gone. And they arguably cheated to make DeepSeek, which is also, it gets into a whole set of questions. They probably made DeepSeek by copying ChatGPT, which you're not supposed to do legally. So interesting questions there. But in a world where companies and countries are incentivized to drop very, very powerful open source models, it will basically make it completely infeasible for any private company to get too large of a market share because the open source models will come in, and to the average person who is trying to start their own business, or they're, in rural Nigeria or whatever, and they're trying to get onto the internet or learn a new language or have one of these tools assist them to make a business or whatever it's going to be. Like there's going to be many, many, many different applications of AI. All that is going to be incredibly accessible and incredibly cheap because open source will force that to happen.
If I were to draw a line to something like the internet, I think something that's very cool about what you're saying is the open weight model that keeps getting better is so easily deployable to so many people.
Yes.
Because the equivalent of this, for let's use the internet as an example, is
the physical,
there isn't a free, because it's a physical thing that needs to be built and a service that needs to be provided in that way. Nobody can just keep deploying the free internet infrastructure. Somebody needs to pay and lay like the fiber optic cable for the internet to be like brought to that new place. But anywhere with an internet connection is somewhere that this can be deployed to. So like any equivalent or similarly impactful technology prior to this, because it has physical infrastructure behind it, the free version can't be deployed as quickly as this. And I think that's so interesting. This makes this so different from any sort of larger technology before it.
It's like if a company came in and they said, hey, we just put up 1 billion satellites into space, and here's free satellite internet for anybody who wants it at any time.
Exactly.
All of the ISPs right now who have these like physical connections that run our internet would be like, what the fuck? What? And they would not be able to justify their monopolies anymore.
It's kind of, that's what I was, in my head, I was like, if China just announced, hey, America, C-Mobile, get on it. It's free, $0 a month, unlimited data.
Anybody can connect.
C-Mobile.
That'd be wild, man. It's like what they did. It's crazy. It's so cool.
I think I guess the pushback would be it has yet to prove the full utility of something like the internet. We haven't got to the point where it's fully understood of like how it's going to impact and improve I don't know, any aspect of every aspect of life. We can use it in like very concrete ways now, but the scale at which it will affect everything is not really known yet.
I mean, I think that's a fair thing to say. We don't know if it's going to be as big as the internet or whatever, but I'd say if you look around, I mean, what I'm seeing just in not even in big business headlines, but in regular people's lives, people are using ChatGPT instead of Google in a lot of situations. Like it's beginning to seep its way into the regular, we mentioned before the show, I was watching a podcast where one of the hosts of the podcast pulled up a large language model and was like using it to ask a question and get a response to a guest he was having. I mean, it's this weird changing of, and by the way, I'm not in supportive of a lot of this ways are kind of scary to me, but it's happening. Like it's happening. And I think it is impacting society in a way. The real question on my mind is not whether it will do these things. It's whether, everyone's retirement is going to plummet to 50% less because there's the way they thought it would work is the stocks are going to crash. You mentioned, it was funny, you mentioned cables being laid.
Mhm.
You know, in 2001, when we had the internet bubble at the beginning, the big company that blew up then and had a huge stock rise was Cisco, who everyone thought would make, you know, they're like the picks and shovels of this gold rush. They sell the fiber optic cable, they lay the systems, they help set up servers. It turns out that's not where the money was. So right now, you know, people are looking at NVIDIA and trying to see, is that the same thing going to happen? Because NVIDIA sells all these GPUs that everyone thinks that's where the money is in AI. But if we get to a spot where, you know, most people are running these low GPU inference models, open source, and we don't need to keep buying 200 billion, 300. I mean, NVIDIA's money comes from 5 customers, basically, and it's the 5 big tech companies that buy it. Then NVIDIA could be in a less, they could be the Cisco of the, that's what we don't know, but that's where we could be headed.
I have a counterpoint.
Yeah.
I think even NVIDIA, who makes the GPUs that runs the AI, I think they're more safe because I don't think that something like DeepSeek changes the demand for AI, but it does change the demand for the AI being 10% better than last year, right? So for OpenAI, can they justify $10 billion to make GPT-7? Maybe not. But regardless of whether people are using GPT-7 or DeepSeek 5, they need a GPU to run AI. So for me, NVIDIA is still like, I don't know if their valuation is good. It's probably overinflated, but they're still going to be highly sought out because the demand for AI is increasing. I think it's just the demand for the model that is slightly better and costs 10 billion more.
Right. Well,
falls.
so I guess it's a valuation question because Cisco didn't disappear. They just got cut to 10% and then have grown slowly back to where they are. Because that's where NVIDIA's big profit comes from, is like them needing to get 10% better.
So
they got to buy
100.
100.
So if those companies stop,
Like if that stops and it's like everyone's running on a normal GPU setup, then it changes.
We've been going for a while, so I want to ask one final thing.
Okay.
I'm just curious, and I'll give my pitch on this. So let's say you are OpenAI, right? For the past 4 years, you release ChatGPT. You're the big hot AI, you know, hottest person at the dance.
Ooh.
You are dance queen up until DeepSeek comes in and takes your crown and kicks you over and rips your dress, and they're the hot new thing. Okay.
That's your setup?
No,
okay,
fine,
so
fine.
ChatGPT is Keynes at the orgy,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
everyone wants a piece of his economist
So the
ass.
question is, and then DeepSeek comes in and they start like, don't want to say eat your lunch, but they basically are saying like, hey, we are offering a product that is 95% as good as yours for free, or at most 5% of it, right? How do you fight back? What do you do? This is, I would argue, an existential threat to a company like OpenAI. I have a theory about what they need to do in order to survive what is basically an increasingly likely reality that they will never have much of an advantage in the quality of their big models because DeepSeek or whoever else will just copy it and make something almost as good a few months later.
That's a great question. All right, so I want to counter like a core axiom of the question, which is that I think, actually, the way I'm seeing it is that ChatGPT is, well, they're hurt by this.
Yeah.
They're the one that kind of makes it out okay. The real loser of this DeepSeek ChatGPT problem is almost everybody else.
Okay.
Everybody who's not the number one brand. I feel
that's
like
kind of what I was thinking is how many people are using Llama, which is something I hadn't even heard of until you brought it up this week.
Quick counterpoint. A lot of people, but it's not, that's
is this because it's
B2C.
Is it like Bing where it's like secretly the search engine?
No, it's not Bing. It's more so what we're talking about, where you guys are, let's say, more like casual AI users. Right? You guys are talking about chatbots. Chatbots are a small percentage of what AI is being used for. If you're talking about a company, for example, Casetext, who made CoCounsel AI for law firms and sold it to Reuters for $650 million. So this is a company who is like very successful that made a law firm specific AI that's being used right now by lawyers, right? This is a hugely successful case. I imagine you and almost nobody listening has ever heard of this, right? But they, as the company who made a product on top of the core kind of foundational AI concepts, were able to make this incredibly successful specialized business. And they are incentivized to go use Llama because then they keep all the money rather than having to pay ChatGPT for it. So Llama is actually used very broadly, but you're not going to hear about it because it's not a chat bot that people go use.
Oh, this is like when you tell people about Oracle and they're so highly valued, and the guy who owns Oracle is one of the richest people in the world. And
the
then
average person has
and then
no
most
idea.
people have no idea.
No
what's
idea
going
what
on.
Oracle is.
Oracle at all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but so first of all, I think chatbots are becoming more and more of a part of regular people's information diet or discourse or discovery.
Yes.
And I think ChatGPT, if you ask the regular person, they don't know anything other than ChatGPT.
Yes.
It is like the brand.
Yes.
So, it's almost like an Apple versus Android situation where the DeepSeek can be the Android where it's more mass adopted. The phones can be jailbroken. There's a lot of variety. You can make your own on Android. And then there's this one premium charging more brand that has, whatever, a little bit more trust, a little bit more people prefer that. I think ChatGPT is isolating from the pack in that it's the only one that has a standout brand that can survive this. And once they cut down on some of their insane expenditures, they're still making a crap ton of money. I mean, this is billions in subscription revenue direct, and they have other ways to make money on top of that. So my world based on this would be like, oh yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, keep going. And then I want to pull up a very quick graph and then we'll move on to new things. But
just that in that, I think Google is a very valuable business. 90% of their profit comes from search.
Yes.
Even if they become the new Google or take a big chunk of that market share, that's an incredibly valuable business. And I don't think ChatGPT is so much in trouble as I think the other competitors who thought they could make their own LLMs and stuff like, I think they're more in trouble.
Yeah.
Versus this open source area. That's my feedback.
The quick theory I have is that, so this is a chart. This is from a Substack article that is, I would recommend for people interested in the environmental impact of AI. I think this is a very interesting deep dive into it, called Using ChatGPT is Not Bad for the Environment. But one of the things that he talks about in this long Substack article is if you look at the total AI usage in all data centers, chatbots are a tiny percentage of it. So what we as as the plebs think about with AI is that AI is ChatGPT. It's a site where you go and ask it questions. But the reality is where it's really, I think, going to have the most value is not that. It's where AI is integrated into all these other services across society to make everything much more efficient. And again, some examples, there's like finance models that companies are using that helps them like make vastly improved decisions.
The quants are going to be in the streets.
Yeah.
Who will stand up for the quants?
Yeah. Quants are going to be, no, but now quants are going to have these AI
Jerry
models.
Seinfeld on Jane Street.
And these things exist right now. AlphaSense and Bloomberg GPT are two examples of like very, very, very successful companies that are using these things in manufacturing technology. Like John Deere has See and Spray technology. There's the medical industry is starting to use AI
Dude,
for
I
imaging.
hate John Deere, and I fear what they create with AI.
I was going to say, John Deere, we could talk about John Deere's predatory business model on another episode.
3 hours. Yeah, we'll bring that up.
Like AI, again, AI is used for all of the internet, for search, for algorithms on social media, for self-driving cars. Like AI is sort of
crypto bots in my YouTube comments. Like all this needs to be powered by.
So it's worth acknowledging chatbots are a lot less sort of a part of the pie than maybe it feels like as a casual user. My quick thesis is that specialized models like that, where you are saying, look, we're going to make a really focused business that is helping one industry or sub-industry really, really, really accentuate what they're doing and make it better and easier for customers. There are examples of that right now that are incredibly successful, and I think that's going to really grow. Mm-hmm. And I think it is actually, you're in a weaker position if you are OpenAI with ChatGPT, where you're trying to be everything to everyone. They have what's called a foundational model, which is that it's meant to answer any question. And I think what is more likely to be a sustainable business model is if you go make a really, really, really strong, focused, specialized AI model that can be based off of ChatGPT's stuff initially, but you build on top of it, and then you make an incredible tool for doctors or for the government to do tax remittance or whatever, right? And there's so many industries that can benefit from these types of things. Dude. So you want to be the specialized company rather than the company that is ChatGPT trying to make the tool for everybody. You don't want to be the internet provider. You want to be Facebook, who you have a product on top of the core technology.
A government provided tax GPT that just does your taxes for you.
Or a private one. That is going to happen soon. It's going to happen really soon, within
That'd
a few
be
years.
Awesome.
I know everybody loves to, there are so many scary things about AI, but there's so many shitty things we deal with in the world on a day-to-day basis that AI can and will fix.
Get this, we don't even need to use AI to fix that. Yeah, it doesn't even. I don't know if you know this.
That's a fair point.
But other places have made it better pre-AI.
Nope.
I don't understand.